What happens if this changes everything we thought we knew about the current dynamics in our favorite town? What if this single, terrifying moment becomes the beginning of something much bigger? Something so sinister and devastating that it completely shatters a family beyond any hope of repair. Guys, I don't think we're paying attention to what comes next. We are all so hyper-focused on the immediate danger, the spiked drink, and the impending crash, but we absolutely need to look at the massive, catastrophic shockwave that is rapidly approaching. This is not just about a poor decision made under the influence of a drugged beverage. This is about a calculated, cold-blooded maneuver designed to break a man's soul into a million unfixable pieces. If you look at the trajectory of this narrative, you can see the invisible strings being pulled from the shadows. We are standing on the precipice of a storyline that will redefine psychological warfare. The future consequences of this single night will bleed into every corner of the city, forcing everyone to question who they can truly trust when the absolute worst-case scenario becomes their waking reality. Let us take a very quick look at the current board just to see where our chess pieces are currently positioned. Willow is severely impaired, fighting the heavy, disorienting effects of a spiked drink, yet she is getting behind the wheel of a vehicle with little Wiley and Amelia secured in the back seat. Michael is absolutely furious, his heart pounding out of his chest as he desperately races against the clock to intercept her before tragedy strikes. Jacinda is lurking on the periphery, watching the chaos she engineered unfold with terrifying precision. The board is set. The trap is sprung, but this immediate crisis is merely the starting line for a much darker journey. We are not going to dwell on the crash itself, because the twisted metal and shattered glass are nothing compared to the psychological ruins that will be left behind when the dust finally settles. So, let us build the first potential future that could emerge from this wreckage. Imagine the chilling aftermath of the collision. The police and paramedics arrive at a desolate, fog-covered stretch of road. The red and blue emergency lights slice through the darkness, illuminating a horrific scene. Willow is found slumped over the steering wheel, unconscious, bruised, and bleeding, completely unresponsive to the chaotic rescue efforts happening around her. But here is the detail that changes the entire game. The back doors of the vehicle are swung wide open. A tiny, familiar backpack belonging to Wiley lies abandoned on the cold, damp asphalt. A cherished stuffed animal belonging to Amelia is left behind on the floorboard. But Wiley and Amelia are entirely gone. They have vanished into thin air. Initially, the authorities might assume that the terrified children wandered away from the wreckage in a dazed panic. But looking ahead, that theory falls apart instantly. Injured, frightened children do not just disappear without a trace, and an unconscious Willow certainly could not have moved them. This could lead to the terrifying realization that this was a highly coordinated abduction. Now, we have to ask the most important question. Who benefits from this nightmare? The answer points directly to Jacinda. If Jacinda simply wanted Willow out of the picture, causing a fatal accident would suffice. But if Willow simply dies, Michael will grieve, yes, but he will immediately channel all his fierce protective energy into raising his children. He would lean on his family, and he would eventually heal. He would not need Jacinda. However, if Wiley and Amelia are violently ripped away from him, Michael will completely shatter. He will be consumed by a toxic mixture of blinding rage and paralyzing guilt, feeling that he fundamentally failed as a father. And in that suffocating darkness, Jacinda positions herself as his sole savior. She does not need him to fall in love with her immediately. She only needs him to become utterly dependent on her presence. She will be the one holding him as he breaks down, the one making his coffee, the one whispering reassurances that they will find the children. She builds a trauma bond so deep and manipulative that Michael becomes her emotional prisoner. The bigger consequence may be that Jacinda is secretly holding the keys to the very cage she locked the children in, playing the role of the tragic hero while orchestrating the ultimate villainous masterstroke. Now, let us pivot and look at a second future, a completely different path that alters the entire landscape of this narrative. What if Jacinda is not the ultimate mastermind she believes herself to be? What if she is merely a pawn who accidentally invited a true monster into her game? Enter Hudson. We know this mysterious businessman has just arrived in town, and his presence screams hidden agendas and dangerous connections. There is a strong chance that Jacinda and Hudson share a dark, unspoken history. Perhaps they were partners in a past grift, or perhaps she owes him a massive debt that she cannot repay. If that happens, the story could be heading toward a scenario where Jacinda only called Hudson for a minor favor, maybe to delay the ambulance or to ensure the crash happened without witness. But Hudson, being a ruthless opportunist, sees the children in the back seat and recognizes the ultimate leverage. He doesn't just help Jacinda, he hijacks her entire operation. Hudson's operatives pull Wiley and Amelia from the wreckage, completely blindsiding Jacinda. This shifts the power dynamic entirely. Jacinda is no longer in control. She is terrified, forced to play along with a billionaire criminal because if she exposes him, she exposes her own role in the drug drink and the crash. The future consequences of this path are monumental. Hudson could use the missing children to extort the most powerful figures in town. He could demand absolute control over Sonny and his entire underground empire, threatening the children's safety if his demands are not met. Michael, Carly, and Sonny would be tearing the city apart, launching a brutal, bloody mob war to find the kids, completely unaware that the man pulling the strings is hiding in plain sight in the corporate suites of the city. Jacinda thought she was playing a twisted game of romance and isolation, but she accidentally triggered a catastrophic war that could burn the entire city to the ground. But what if we look at the third future? This is the most unexpected wild card possibility, the path that very few people are anticipating but would make for the most compelling television. What if Willow is not a victim of circumstance, but a desperate mother who realized she was being hunted? In her drugged, woozy state as she fought to keep her eyes open, what if she noticed the headlights of Hudson's operatives tailing her every move? Realizing she could not outrun them, she intentionally crashed the car to create a chaotic diversion. Before the operatives could reach the vehicle, she managed to pull Wiley and Amelia from the wreckage and hid them somewhere incredibly obscure, an old abandoned cabin, a hidden storm drain, or a forgotten alleyway telling them to stay absolutely silent no matter what happens. Then she collapses from her injuries. When she wakes up handcuffed to a hospital bed, the combination of the spiked drink and severe head trauma has completely wiped her memory. She remembers the fear, she remembers the crash, but the location of her children is locked behind a wall of amnesia. This could lead to the most heartbreaking character trajectory imaginable. The evidence on the ground makes her look like a monster. The police suspect foul play. Michael looks at her with absolute disgust and hatred, believing she intentionally harmed their children in a drugged frenzy. Carly demands she be locked away forever. Sonny contemplates lethal retaliation. Willow becomes a pariah, completely isolated and universally despised. But deep within her fractured subconscious, a single flickering memory tells her that her babies are alive and waiting for her. What happens next may be a thrilling sequence where Willow must escape police custody, going on the run as a fugitive, desperately trying to retrace her own steps to find Wiley and Amelia before the real villains, Jacinda and Hudson, find them first. It turns the victim into a rogue hero, fighting against her own broken mind and the wrath of her entire family. If you ask me, looking at all these branching paths, the path that feels most likely is the calculated, sinister alliance between Jacinda and Hudson, where Jacinda actively uses the tragedy to systematically isolate Michael from his support system. I keep coming back to the idea that Jacinda is a master manipulator who feeds on grief and vulnerability like a parasite. She desperately wants Michael to look at Willow with absolute disgust and zero forgiveness. When Willow eventually wakes up in the hospital with no memory of the crash, Michael is going to demand answers that she simply cannot give. He will scream at her, asking why she was driving impaired, and most importantly, where the kids are. And Jacinda will be standing right there, just over Michael's shoulder, playing the gentle peacemaker while secretly fueling his rage. She will whisper poison into his ear, convincing him that Willow's negligence is the reason his world is destroyed. The story could be heading toward a devastating psychological thriller where Michael is unknowingly seeking comfort in the arms of the very woman who orchestrated his living nightmare. It is a slow burn betrayal that will make the eventual reveal absolutely explosive. The sheer emotional manipulation required to pull this off is staggering, and it perfectly aligns with the dark, obsessive trajectory they have been building for Jacinda's character. So, if that scenario unfolds, what will be the next massive shockwave to hit the audience? We cannot end on a simple conclusion. The future is far too expansive for that. If Jacinda and Hudson have successfully pulled off the abduction, what will come after the initial panic? Imagine the final breathless moments of a Friday episode. We cut away from the frantic, tear-filled search parties. We transition away from Michael sobbing into Jacinda's deceptive embrace. We fade into a dark, unfamiliar, windowless room. The heavy metal door is bolted shut from the outside. Wiley and Amelia slowly wake up on a small, uncomfortable cot. They are terrified, clutching onto each other for dear life. Amelia looks up with tear-filled eyes and asks Wiley where they are and when their daddy is coming to get them. Wiley, trying desperately to be the brave older brother, whispers that he does not know, but they have to be quiet. Then, the camera slowly pulls back, moving through the thick concrete wall into the dimly lit hallway outside. A shadow stands in the gloom. We do not see a face, only a gloved hand holding a burner phone. A voice speaks quietly into the receiver. The kids are alive. The next phase begins now. Is it Jacinda on the other end of the line, smiling a wicked smile as she comforts a broken Michael? Or is it Hudson, proving that he is the ultimate threat and that even Jacinda is just a pawn in his terrifying game? The bigger consequence may be that Michael is digging through the entire city, mobilizing the police and the mob to hunt down a faceless monster, completely unaware that the monster has already moved into his home, poured him a cup of coffee, and promised him that everything will be okay. The future consequences of this betrayal will not just break hearts. It will ignite a war that will leave scars on this family for generations to come.
Goodbye. Please like, subscribe, and comment on the GH Spoilers Daily channel.